Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Being the Marshmallow, Living and Coping with PTSD. I am, as always, Bob Wagner, and once again back with me are my trusty co-stars, Pete. Hey, how you doing? And my good buddy, Blimey. Ahoy! I wanted to apologize for skipping last week's segment. There's been some developments in my life, good ones in fact, that have taken up a fair bit of my time, and as a result, I have not, unfortunately, been able to devote as much time to these videos as I would like to. To begin with, I got a job outside the home. The writing and video blogs are not paying off as well as I would like, and consequently I have adult responsibilities, I have rent and bills and so forth that I have to pay, and having PTSD does not change that, so I had to go out and get a job outside the home. The good news is I am loving it. This is a really good job with a really good company. It's a wonderful, welcoming, nurturing environment. My coworkers are universally amazing people who I absolutely think the world of. My boss is the sweetest lady you could ever hope to meet. Really supportive, really great environment to be in, and I consider myself very, very lucky to be working with these people. So huzzah for that. The other thing that's been taking up a lot of my time, and if you're on my social media feeds, you may have been aware of this already, but I'm getting married at the end of June. The lady that I've typically referred to in these videos as my wife is, in fact, just this really amazing, wonderful woman who one day informed me, "No, you're my husband," and I went, "Okay, but we don't have any paperwork on it, and we are going to change that on June 29th. And as you can imagine, getting a wedding planned takes up a lot of time, even when both people are pulling in the same direction and working as hard at it to make it go off without a hitch as we are. So I haven't had as much time to do these videos, and typically they take about a dozen or so takes before I can actually put one up that I feel good about. But, you know, good things. So good reasons to be diverted from this. But I did want this week to talk about, about something very, very important in regards to PTSD, and that is flashbacks. Flashbacks are probably the most commonly known manifestation, of PTSD. They're the ones in the widest social consciousness due to the media and due to TV and movies, and typically TV and movies get that stuff really wrong. To begin with, people who have PTSD, we don't act out against our environment. There are things, well, we don't when we're having a flashback. There are circumstances, like say during a rage flash, where we may lash out against our environment. I'm ashamed to admit that I've punched a lot of holes in a lot of walls in my day during rage flashes, and I've had to work very, very hard at not doing that anymore. But when we're having a flashback, that's not what happens. Okay, so that's just basically Hollywood nonsense. You know, we're not Ramboing out. We're not going to go and shoot up a school or something like that. That's Hollywood nonsense. That's really and that's not even nearly what I'd like to say. But I'm trying to keep this PG-13. So don't believe TV and don't believe the movies. If you want to look for a good example of somebody having a flashback in popular entertainment, watch the movie American Sniper or watch the Netflix series Jessica Jones. Both of those depict very accurate, in my personal opinion, examples of somebody who has been through a traumatic event having a flashback. All right? But, this whole idea of just lashing out and freaking out, that's not what we do, okay? But I want to get into what actually is happening when we have a flashback. My Uncle Morty used to have flashbacks. He used to have really bad ones. Absolutely hated them. What happened? He stopped eating hippies. Thanks, Pete. You are a witty fellow. That joke sounded so much funnier inside my head when I wrote it. But as I was saying, having gotten their contractually obligated 30 seconds of screen time out of the way, flashbacks are not an overt manifestation of, we're not lashing out, we're not hurting people, we're not destroying things. We're certainly not going on a mass shooting. That is not a manifestation of PTSD. People who do those things are probably very mentally ill, but you don't have a flashback, pick up an AR-15 and go to the mall. Okay, it doesn't happen, and I will discuss that in another episode because I really want to clear that myth up. What happens when you're having a flashback is most of us, and I say most of us because it's a unique experience, but in my experience after 32 years of dealing with this disease, and from interacting with a large number, with quite a few people who have had it as well, typically what happens is that we go into lockdown, okay? We kind of go catatonic. We appear to have turned into a statue, and we may look like we're staring off into space. That is the outward manifestation of a flashback. We may not give any indication that anything is wrong. I myself, once, perfect example, I was once on my way to a social gathering with my now ex-wife, and I was sitting in the back seat of the car, and she was close enough for me to touch her, and in the 10 blocks it took me to get to the coffee shop, I had 3 flashbacks. 3 full flashbacks in the back seat of the car, as close to my ex-wife as I am to this computer monitor, and she had no clue, okay? Because I just went into lockdown, and that's normally how it is. So it may not seem like anything's wrong on the surface unless you really know us and know what to watch for. What happens when we have a flashback is some sensory stimulus in our real-world environment resonates with our trauma. Maybe it's a loud sound. A buddy of mine is former special forces, and for him the sound of clicking metal is a trigger, and he's been known to have flashbacks at the sound of clicking metal because that sounds like safety's being taken off of weapons, and that triggers his brain to go, hey, we're about to get into combat, and cue the music, and boom, Hellzone holodeck goes live in his skull. Maybe it's a smell. The sense of scent, the sense of smell, is the one most closely connected with memory. This is a medical fact. You can look it up. They've done studies. And so maybe you have your PTSD because you were in a fire and you smell smoke, and all of a sudden, boom, it activates the PTSD. It triggers you. We've talked about triggers. It triggers a flashback, and suddenly you are back re-experiencing what happened, okay? It is not a bad memory. I need to emphasize that. A bad memory is, you burned your tongue on your dinner last night, okay? And, you may, a year from now, remember that moment. You may remember, oh, hey, I burned my tongue and had that white feeling and it was unpleasant. But it's going to be kind of like watching it on TV. Like, like you're flipping through channels and boom, hey, there's a 10-second clip of a guy burning his tongue on his dinner. And even if that guy looks just like you, there's really not a big connection. It's like, okay, yeah, it's unfortunate, but there's distance. It's disconnected. A flashback it's happening all over again. It is full sensory. It is every bit as real as this Pepsi can. Tasty beverage. And to give you an example of that, my trauma, as I've mentioned in the past, comes from some pretty horrendous abuse at the hands of my father. And when I am having a flashback, I can feel his hands on me. I can smell the coffee on his breath. I can smell his aftershave. I can't be around people wearing Old Spice because it resonates with him and it reminds me so strongly of him that it's dangerous to me to be around people wearing Old Spice aftershave. And what happens is your body replays in full sensory re-experiencing this traumatic event. Okay, I mentioned this a couple of minutes ago, Hellzone holodeck. It's just like that. If you've ever watched Star Trek The Next Generation, yes, I know I'm a nerd, deal with it. It's like a nightmare scenario on their holodeck. It is full sensory, it is real, it is sights, it is sounds, it is touch. I can feel my father's hands hitting me when I am having a flashback. I can't feel that white feeling when I, from like 6 months ago, from when I burned my mouth on a cup of hot chocolate or on dinner that I didn't let cool properly. And that's how it is for people with PTSD. Now, there are circumstances under which we may act against our environment, but that's reactive, okay? And what I mean by that is our real-world environment. Like in my case, you can see behind me my kitchen, my roommate's bedroom is back through there. There's windows and everything. Something may happen in my environment here in the house that would cause me to react. Like suppose my roommate came out of his bedroom, put his hand on my shoulder. Hey, Bob, how's it going? If he does that when I'm having a flashback, my brain is not going to interpret this as one of my best friends saying good morning to me. My brain is going to interpret it within the context of a traumatic assaultive episode from my life, a life or death moment that was so horrendous that 30 years later, it still haunts me and it still affects everything that I do in my life, all right? And it brings out our our survival instincts, our self-preservation instincts. You can believe in the Bible, you can believe in Darwin, whatever you want to believe in. At the end of the day, human beings are predatory apes who got here because our ancestors were really good at not letting other things hurt them, okay? And so what happens is we are reliving a life or death horrendous experience. We are convinced that we are in a life or death situation, but we're in lockdown. Our environment imposes itself on us. Somebody grabs us. Never, ever grab a person who has PTSD unless they are actively in the process of hurting themselves or someone else. By all means, do what you have to do to keep people safe, but do not just go willy-nilly putting hands on people that are mentally ill, okay? It's bad and it's potentially dangerous. You really shouldn't go grabbing people without their permission anyway in general. But what happens at that point is the stimulus from the real world gets reinterpreted through the filter of this life or death traumatic experience that we've had, and we react accordingly. We may, and I say this from my own personal experience. I had somebody grab me one time during a flashback, and I didn't even realize it, but I'd pinned him to a wall. I didn't hurt him, thank goodness, but I went from frozen catatonic statue state to I had them up against a wall with my forearm against their throat, and if my wife hadn't been present to talk me down and to manage me, I can't really say what I would have done. Okay, and now I'm not saying that to make you afraid of us, because we're not dangerous people. We're not bad people. I've talked about this. I'm a great guy. Okay, people like me. Most people who have PTSD are good, warm, decent human beings. We're your mail carrier, we're your kid's daycare teacher, we're the guy giving you a cup of coffee through the window at Starbucks. We're your friends and your neighbors, and we're good people. The problem is that occasionally our self-preservation instinct kicks in, and we just kind of react. And that's why you don't ever want to put hands on us during a symptomatic episode, because we are going to interpret that contact as a threat against our survival, and our body may just kind of take over, okay? If you want to interact with us, if you want to make physical contact with us, use what I call the two-finger method, okay? Now, there's lots of jokes that we could make about these two fingers. Ha, ha, ha. Like I said, PG-13. What you do, and Blimey here, he's going to help me out, okay? Come here, Blimey. Now, suppose Blimey here, Blimey here's having a flashback. Now, if I want to get his attention, or if I just think that, things may not be okay with him, I don't want to grab him. Oi! I warned you about that. See what I mean? Instead, what I want to do is I want to take these two fingers, and I want to do just like this. I want to take them, and I want to touch his shoulder, okay? Move your bandana. I want to take these two fingers. Blimey. Hey, Blimey, is everything okay, buddy? Wait. Oh, ahoy! See, just like that. Gentle, incidental contact. And what happens, thanks, Blimey, happy to be of service, mate. What happens is our body becomes aware of that contact, but we don't interpret it in an assaultive manner. We don't interpret two fingers gently touching our shoulder as an assault, typically, okay? We interpret that as, hey, wait a minute, there's something going on that isn't our trauma, and it kind of brings us back. But remember, keep the contact light, keep the contact gentle, do not grab us, and don't raise your voice. Keep it low, keep it, hey, is everything okay? Bob, is everything all right? Bob, what's going on? Do you need something? Are you okay? Are you having a symptom? Is there something I can do to help you? Keep your voice low, keep your tone calm, keep your message one of help and one of compassion and non-aggression. Loud voices, loud verbal communication are interpreted by our ape brains as a threat. And you don't want to present a threat, because we're already believing that we're in a life or death situation anyway. You don't want to give us any stimulus that is going to be misinterpreted as a threat to our survival. You don't want to give us anything that we are going to incorrectly spin into, I have to defend myself or I am going to die right now. All right. So that is a brief rundown of what a flashback is, one of the ways that you can kind of interact with us during one. And at this point, we're running a bit long, so I'm going to wrap this up. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. And I will probably do a couple more on these, because there's a lot more I want to say, but I'm trying to keep these kind of to 15 minutes maximum. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.